You know that feeling when you're walking down the street and you suddenly realize your sweater is on backward?
Oh, yeah. The worst.
Right. Or like you're looking at a spreadsheet you've checked 10 times and a totally obvious error just seemingly materializes out of nowhere.
Yeah, it's that immediate prickling sense that something is just fundamentally off.
Exactly. It's a tiny, solvable glitch in your reality. You step into a doorway, fix the sweater, or you hit backspace on the keyboard, and you move on with your day.
Right, you just fix it.
But imagine if you couldn't fix it. Like, imagine if that nagging sensation of wrongness wasn't just your sweater or your spreadsheet, but the actual, literal fabric of the universe itself.
That is a terrifying thought.
It really is. And, well, welcome to today's deep dive. We are taking you on a journey into this fascinating fictional excerpt by Max and Claude titled The Demiurge of Ordinary Afternoons.
It's such a brilliant piece of writing.
It really is. And our mission for you today is to explore a massive philosophical question that's hidden right inside the mundane reality of a terraced house in Sheffield.
Yeah. We're asking, what if the feeling that the world is slightly broken isn't just pessimism? What if it's actually an ancient cosmic truth?
Right. And to explore that, we are looking at existence through the eyes of a character named Susan Marchmont.
Right.
She is a 51-year-old woman who works in a charity shop on a Clissold road, and her defining characteristic is this hyper-awareness of what the text calls the accumulation of small wrongnesses.
She just can't unsee them.
Exactly. She lives in a state of constant, low-level friction with the material world.
And we're talking about things most of you listening would probably just tune out completely. I mean, she notices the sheer inadequacy of everyday objects.
Yeah, she times her kitchen tap, for instance, and she knows it takes exactly 47 seconds for the water to get hot.
Which is just so specific.
It is. She scrutinizes a bowl in her sink and observes that the soap bubbles are uneven and careless, like they completely lack the geometric perfection that a bubble ought to possess.
The audacity of those bubbles. Right. Even her boiler doesn't just make noise. For her, it sounds like a creature forced to perform a task it wasn't designed for.
Oh, and the tinned peach.
Yes, the peach. She looks at a tinned peach, which her husband Gerald actually loves, and perceives it as this object of profound sadness.
Because it's just been boiled and sealed in tin until it is utterly without character.
Exactly. The text says it's reduced to a ghost of fruit.
Okay, let's unpack this, because this isn't just someone complaining about an old house, you know?
No, not at all.
Susan experiences life as if she, and, well, all of us, are trapped in a video game that was rushed out in beta testing.
That's a great way to put it.
The physics are bad, the graphics are glitching, the code is just full of redundant, sloppy loops. I mean, even the human digestive system, with its acid reflux and weird, unnecessary valves, feels to her like a prototype that mistakenly went into mass production.
Yeah, she looks at her 1987 melamine cabinets and her laminate countertops that, desperately want to look like granite, but lack the conviction.
Lack the conviction, I love that.
And she doesn't just see cheap decor. She sees empirical evidence that reality itself is a botched job.
But there's a name for this, right?
There is. The text gives a very specific historical name to this perspective, drawing directly on ancient Gnosticism. It's the concept of the Demiurge.
A demiurge.
Right. So in Gnostic cosmology, the material world was not created by the true, perfect, infinite God. It was bungled.
By the demiurge.
Exactly. It was built by a lesser, ignorant, and sometimes arrogant craftsman who built the physical universe without adequate plans. He essentially improvised creation from imperfect memory.
Okay, but wait, I have to push back on this right out of the gate.
Sure.
Because we live in a world where clinical depression and obsessive-compulsive disorder are very real things. I read this and thought, isn't Susan just projecting her own internal psychological distress onto the universe?
That's a completely fair reading.
Like, if you're scrubbing a laminate countertop at 4 in the morning because the bubbles aren't perfectly spherical, you are having a religious awakening. You are having a mental health crisis. Why elevate wiping down a kitchen to the level of a cosmic rebellion?
It is entirely valid to look at Susan through a psychological lens, but the text challenges us to take her cosmology seriously.
Okay.
What if her compulsion isn't the illness, but the symptom of seeing reality too clearly?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Susan actually finds a mysterious old leather-bound Gnostic text tucked away on her bookshelf next to an outdated 1997 atlas. And this book essentially confirms her deepest fears.
That the world is broken.
Right. It speaks of the divine spark of human consciousness being trapped in the prison of heavy, dense matter.
Which Susan cheerfully refers to as failing meat.
Failing meat, exactly. So the book validates her worldview.
But validation doesn't bring her peace, does it? I mean, it actually starts bleeding into her subconscious in a really terrifying way.
It does. She has an incredibly vivid dream where the walls of her kitchen are breathing and expanding, and this faceless figure appears to her and delivers a really crushing message.
Right, about her cleaning.
Yeah. The figure tells Susan that by constantly cleaning her kitchen, she is acting as a little demiurge herself.
A little demiurge.
She is trying to impose her own tiny, flawed order onto the universe's inherent chaos.
I mean, she is trying to outclean physics. She is literally waging a microscopic war against entropy.
Precisely.
And for anyone listening who might need a quick physics refresher, entropy is the second law of thermodynamics. It is the inescapable rule that everything in the universe is constantly moving from a state of order to a state of disorder. Hot things cool down, mountains erode, kitchens get dirty, dust accumulates.
And fighting entropy is the ultimate unwinnable war. The figure in her dream points out the absolute futility of her actions.
Yeah, because she can't win.
What's fascinating here is that her gnosis, her spiritual knowledge of this cosmic prison, doesn't actually free her from the physical world.
Yeah.
She can see the bars of the cage with absolute agonizing clarity. But she still has to eat. She still has to sleep. She still has to scrub the avocado green bathroom suite.
The ancient text gives her the problem, but no solution.
Right. It offers recognition, but zero practical instruction for escape.
It's the psychological burden of seeing the wrongness, but being entirely trapped in the loop of fighting it.
Exactly.
And if the physical world around you is just glitching beta test code, bad laminate, clanking boilers, uneven bubbles, you can almost live with that. You can just buy a new boiler.
Right. A chipped tile just wears out.
But what happens when that glitching, compromised code is your own biology, or the biology of the people you love?
And that is where the story shifts.
Yeah.
We move from the breakdown of inanimate objects to the breakdown of biological systems.
Which is so much darker.
It is.
Oh.
Because a biological system wears out while housing a consciousness that is forced to witness its own decay. Susan makes these harrowing monthly visits to a care home in Rotherham to see her father. He has severe dementia.
It's basically the ultimate manifestation of the Demiurge's cruelest design flaw.
Precisely. His consciousness has entirely evaporated. He hasn't recognized Susan in years, but his biology stubbornly persists.
Yeah.
He sits in a chair staring out at a car park, his body fighting off infections, kept alive by basic cellular routines and medications. The mind is gone, but the failing meat refuses to stop breathing.
And this brings us to Gerald, Susan's husband, which Gerald is just the exact opposite of Susan.
He really is.
If Susan is constantly peering behind the curtain to look at the broken gears of the universe, Gerald refuses to acknowledge there's even a curtain.
Yeah, he's a council planner, he likes gardening shows, and he genuinely loves these specific, highly processed biscuits that come in a red wrapper.
His baseline emotional register is just like mild satisfaction.
Right.
But then one Sunday he goes to the care home with Susan.
And Gerald sits on the edge of the bed. He holds her father's papery, completely unresponsive hand. And in that moment, a man who never questions the universe suddenly sees the wrongness too.
He finally gets it.
He is confronted with the horror of biology outlasting consciousness. That cruel design that allows the self to disappear while the body continues.
And it shakes him to his core. On the car ride home, they have this incredibly heavy conversation. Gerald practically begs Susan, making her promise that if he ever gets if his mind goes, she won't let them keep him going.
Right.
They make a pact not to let each other be kept alive if their consciousness is gone. But Susan internalizes this with a really dark irony, noting that there is no plug to pull.
Exactly. It's just biology doing what biology does.
Which really makes me wonder about Gerald. I mean, he operates on the philosophy of things being mostly not terrible. How does a guy whose baseline is so wonderfully mediocre process this terrifying existential realization without falling apart? Like, how does he not become Susan?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Gerald's acceptance of mediocrity is actually a profound psychological survival mechanism.
Oh, interesting.
Think about the biscuits in the red wrapper, the gardening shows. These aren't just preferences, they are shields. Human beings use mundane routines to protect themselves from existential terror. By anchoring himself to the small, predictable pleasures of the material world, Gerald creates a buffer against the void.
So he sees the void, but he actively turns away from it.
Exactly. He accepts the terrible reality of the care home, asserts a boundary by making that promise in the car, and then purposefully returns his focus to his garden. He chooses to invest in continuation.
He protects himself. But for Susan, the father's eventual death, shortly after that visit, triggers something completely different. Like, when he dies, she doesn't feel grief. She feels relief.
Yeah, facing the absolute worst-case scenario of the Demiurge's design actually strips away a layer of Susan's compulsion.
How so?
She realizes that the ultimate wrongness, the erasure of the mind before the death of the body, cannot be cleaned away. It cannot be organized, scrubbed, or managed.
So the illusion of control just shatters.
Right.
And paradoxically, losing that control seems to free her. We see this play out when Susan and Gerald go to the Peak District to scatter her parents' ashes.
Such a powerful scene.
It is. They open these two identical beige cardboard boxes containing her mother and father. She watches the wind take them, mixing them into the soil, returning matter to matter. She feels lighter. And she decides to start shedding her parents' remaining physical belongings, like really donating them.
And there's a very specific detail here. She takes her mother's favorite pilled blue cardigan to a Marie Curie charity shop. The woman behind the counter immediately recognizes the quality of the garment and says she's going to put it right in the window display.
And Susan learns that the money raised in that specific shop goes directly to Marie Curie nurses.
Right.
The actual people who help patients die with dignity in their own homes. The unwanted, decaying physical object actually becomes the funding for dignity in death.
It's beautiful.
It's this tiny moment where the broken system manages to provide a small grace.
It is. But Susan's own experience with charity shops is about to forcefully test her new perspective.
Oh, yeah. Enter Jean.
Right. She has volunteered at her local shop for 7 years, essentially running the place, creating her own meticulous systems of order. Then, a new volunteer named Jean arrives.
And Jean is cold, highly efficient, and cares only for aesthetics.
Exactly. Jean decides to reorganize all the donated books by color.
Which is a nightmare if you actually want to find a book.
It really is.
You've ruined their discoverability just to make the shelf look pretty. It's the ultimate false order. And then Jean essentially manages Susan right out of her job.
Yeah.
The manager calls and unceremoniously tells Susan they just don't need her anymore.
And the old Susan, the one aggressively fighting entropy and acting as the little Demiurge, would have been furious. She would have fought tooth and nail to maintain her territory and her system.
But here's where it gets really interesting. She doesn't fight it.
No.
She just accepts it. She puts down the sponge. And this reaction is tied directly to a second book she finds among the donations before she leaves. It's called The Cloud of Unknowing.
Which is a real, historical medieval text.
Yeah, but it's not just about, like, embracing uncertainty. It actively advises the reader to give up the intellectual pursuit of the divine. You can't outthink the universe, and you certainly can't outclean it.
The text argues that the divine cannot be grasped by intellect, but only through a dart of longing love that pierces the cloud of unknowing.
And Susan finds marginalia in this copy, right?
She does, written by a previous owner. It's a handwritten note asking, how do you love what you can't understand?
Wow.
And this question becomes the catalyst for her massive psychological shift. She realizes she has spent 51 years holding onto a heavy, burning rope, trying to pull the universe into alignment. The cloud of unknowing gives her permission to simply let go of the rope.
But how does someone whose entire identity is built on analyzing and fixing wrongness actually learn to surrender? I mean, what is the mechanism there?
It is the shift from fighting to witnessing.
Witnessing.
For decades, Susan thought her purpose was to compensate for the Demiurge's incompetence, to be the sole arbiter of order in her kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
The medieval text teaches her that true gnosis isn't about escaping the prison.
Right.
And it certainly isn't about scrubbing the bars until they shine. True gnosis is seeing the bars clearly, acknowledging that you are in a prison, and choosing to live anyway.
Choosing to live anyway.
When she stops trying to fix the chaos, she is no longer a combatant. She becomes a conscious witness.
So what does this all mean? Like, how does a person who knows the universe is a bungled beta test actually live a Tuesday afternoon?
Well, the narrative takes us to this quiet, incredibly ordinary evening.
Gerald is out in the garden, tending to these 2 pink summer flowers he just planted. He knows the slugs might eat them. He knows the English weather might ground them. But he plants them anyway. He invests in the attempt.
And then they're inside, eating dinner on the sofa, watching a David Attenborough documentary about birds of paradise.
They watch this male bird perform an absurd, elaborate, exhausting dance in the middle of the jungle, and the female bird just watches, judges, and makes her choice.
Right.
And Susan has this quiet epiphany. She realizes that life, even in a fundamentally broken universe, is about the calculus of enough. The male bird's ridiculous dance was enough.
And Gerald is enough.
Mm.
Gerald, with his mild satisfaction, his red wrapper biscuits, and his gardening shows, the man who chose to stay with her despite her exhaustion, despite her 4 a.m. cleaning sprees, and despite the existential terror they faced in the care home.
Because the world might be broken, entropy is absolutely inevitable. The kitchen will get dirty again.
It always does.
We are all trapped in failing systems, navigating biological machines that are mathematically guaranteed to break down. The Demiurge bungled the job.
Yeah.
But within that flawed, glitching creation, Gerald still plants the flowers. Susan still chooses to sit on the sofa and hold his hand. Continuation, despite the glitches, becomes its own quiet form of rebellion.
The refusal to demand perfection is what finally sets her free. She accepts the compromise cosmology.
Which brings us to a final thought for you to take away from this deep dive. We started by talking about that prickling feeling, the backward sweater, the spreadsheet error, the glitch in the universe you just can't fix.
Right.
It's so easy to spend our lives exhausted, acting as little demiurges, trying to force order onto a reality that naturally slides into chaos. But if we are just fragments of consciousness temporarily housed in decaying matter, what if our ultimate purpose isn't to fix the universe?
Yeah, what if it's not?
What if our job isn't to outsmart it, outclean it, or even to escape it? What if our only real responsibility is to be the universe's way of witnessing its own beautiful, terrible brokenness and deciding to love it anyway?